Possibly the biggest economic event of the year is taking place tomorrow morning. I'm Dan Beer, eXp Realty here, Beer Home Team. The Fed is meeting tomorrow to determine the next rate hike. Now, here's what we need to be watching for. We're going to be watching every word. And I have to say, going back, the Fed's always met. It meets routinely every year, and it's always happened that I have never hung on every word the Fed says like I do now. So number one, we'll be watching for the words they say. What will the rate hike be? The market's expecting a 3/4 point hike. And again, just to be clear, we're talking about the federal funds rate. That's the rate at which the Fed will lend money to banks and then it gets lent out to us. So we're not talking about mortgage rates, though of course they're going to be affected. Now, theoretically, the market's already priced in, the mortgage markets have already priced in a 3/4 point hike, which historically would be a very large hike, but is exactly what happened in the last Fed meeting a month ago, and it's what we're expecting to see now. So what we're thinking will happen is if they change the rates by 3/4 of a point, theoretically the market should be steady. They should have already anticipated, and there shouldn't be dramatic change because it's priced in. Now, if they surprise us, and this is what we really need to be watching for, if they surprise us with a full point hike, then I think you're going to see stock market devastation. I'm no stock market, expert or prognosticator. It's not my space, but I do know enough that if the Fed were to surprise us with a full point hike, you could expect to see major movement, downward movement in the stock market, and we could expect to see mortgage rates really respond by jumping. The reason why is that behind that means that the Fed really believes that inflation, which is what this entire thing is all about, that inflation is so heavy that they've actually determined they need to make an entire point hike to try to tame inflation. Now, interestingly enough, if they surprise us with a half point hike, theoretically that should be wonderful news. It should mean that, hey, maybe inflation isn't as bad as we think it is, and the markets should respond really positively to that. My feeling, however, is that the market would call BS on it. And what I mean is, I think the market, if we get anything but a 3/4 point hike, even if it's a half point, instead of the market reacting positively, I think that the market would say, you know what? We think you have succumbed, Federal Reserve, Fed Chairman Powell, we think you've given in to political pressure. You didn't have what it takes to really make the move that has to be made. And because of that, we believe you're mortgaging our future. And so therefore, we're going to respond negatively. I think we're in a really unique environment right here. And by the way, we're going to know here within X amount of hours from when you receive this email, because the Fed meets tomorrow and you're getting this here tonight. But I think that we're in an interesting environment where if anything happens, whether it be better or worse theoretically than what's supposed to happen, we're going to get negative reactions. So we're all watching for it. At the end of the day, the entire everything is, can we tame inflation? Inflation being tamed, brought down, what it would mean would be mortgage rates would come down. And when mortgage rates come down, by the way, so do rents, because the higher the cost of ownership, the higher that landlords can push the cost of renting without creating a buyer out of their tenants. So there's so many elements that are wound together. We're watching every single bit of it for you. We'll be reporting on it again, of course. By the way, also next week on Wednesday, we'll have our State of the Market address, which we're doing monthly via Zoom webinar. And if you'd like to be a part of that, there'll be a link for you to just join us there. If you can join us live, great. People are asking live questions. I do my best to answer them. Or, of course, you'll get the replay. I think that anybody that was there this past time would tell you that we're putting out a lot of information, so that the key is for you to know not just what the headlines are telling us, because they can be so easily manipulated. An example of that would be they could tell us, hey, inventory's gone up by, it's tripled. It's up 3x. Well, that sounds terrifying, except for what they didn't tell us is it started at such a crazy low number of 0.6 months inventory that even if it were to triple to 2.4 months, we're still not even there, by the way, but if that happened, you're still very much in an incredibly low inventory environment. But they'll play with the statistics. So the point of the State of the Market address that I'll do here monthly, again, it's coming up next Wednesday, and you have a link in the email that you're receiving this, or if you're seeing this on social, there'll be a link there as well. Is we're just having you informed on a non-agenda driven, in a non-agenda driven environment, but just other than simply having you have the right information. Here's what I know. If you're thinking, before you sell, before you do anything, what you really need to do is get the intel, the intelligence on what is happening in the marketplace. Our core belief is that the market never hurts anybody. Even in something like the Great Recession, the market didn't hurt anybody, but not having the right intel, the right data, the right just information from a non-agenda driven place, but just purely data that you could interpret or is interpreted even for you, so you don't have to read between the lines and guess at it. That is, the lack of having that is really what hurt people. It's always what hurts people. Now, circling back here, because there is so much to share, and that's why I'll have another video coming out here with the recap of what's happened, is aside from what the Fed does, do they raise rates this much, that much, or the other, what we're also looking for is sentiment. Or we're looking for what is Fed Chairman Powell saying, or not saying, I should say, but trying to say between the lines. So is the sentiment that inflation really is out of control, that they're getting a hold on, that they're doing a good job of bringing down demand, which by the way is the only thing the Fed can really do. They don't have a great lever on trying to decrease supply or increase supply, excuse me, right? Because if they increase supply, that would theoretically help bring prices down, which would help bring inflation down, but they don't have a great tool for that. So their only real tool is trying to kill demand, which is exactly why Wall Street reacts so negatively if anything outside of what we're expecting happens were to go down. So we'll be reading between the lines. We'll be, of course, listening for their exact words. We'll interpret it all for you. I'll bring back the news. And I'm Dan Beer here, Beer Home Team, trying to keep you informed. And so we'll see you on the next video.